The British ruled India for 200 years. And in these 200 years, on one hand, they drained our treasures and wealth, and on the other hand, gave us Western science, technology, and progress, which we still enjoy today. But the British left behind something else. They left behind a sense of loyalty to the British crown, starting with Victoria and maybe still going on today. The British gave us many gifts, the last being our Independence Day, 15th August 1947. But the King of the United Kingdom still remained the King of India till 1950. And the Crown Princess was also stripped of her title in that year when the country became a sovereign, democratic republic. But this loyalty to the crown never really went away. And even today, many Rajbhakts can be found in India some 75 years later. This year is the 100th birth anniversary of that crown princess, who would go on to become the longest reigning monarch in British history, Queen Elizabeth II. And thus, to commemorate her and to commemorate that Raj Bhakti, this documentary is made. Queen Victoria died in 1901 and Queen Elizabeth II died in 2002. In these 121 years, 6 state funerals of 6 monarchs of UK, Victoria, Edward VII, George V, George VI, Edward VIII, by then the Duke of Windsor, and of course Queen Elizabeth. And lest we forget the funerals of people like Princess Margaret, the Queen Mother, and Prince Philip, who were royal family members or consorts, and all of whom received state funerals. These funerals were all covered by the British media and gave us detailed pictures of how the monarchs were paid their last tributes. For our purpose, we will have a look at the funeral coverages of these 6 monarchs only. Not only will we look at funeral coverages, but also death news that the official television gave us, focusing on the British channels. From silent videos to colored, advanced ones, this will be a funny journey. Of course, when Queen Victoria died, there was no talkie videos, and thus a silent film shows us how the last journey of the Queen, circa 1901, was conducted. It was produced by early versions of the Pathé News. Pathé News was a British-French producer of newsreels and documentaries from 1910 to 1970 in the United Kingdom. Its founder, Charles Pathé, was a pioneer of moving pictures in the silent era. The Pathé News Archives is known as British Pathé. How her casket came via rail and then a huge procession with military troops and bands covered the Empress of India's final journey is very well documented here. The Pathé News gave us the funeral of King Edward VII in 1910. Much like his mother's, Edward VII's funeral coverage from the Pathé News is silent. King George V reigned from 1910 and 1936, and his death and funeral were all covered by the Parthenos. These are talky ones. The former one elaborated the life and death of George V and how he was loved by all his people.
His Majesty King George V of England has died at his Norfolk home, and the news comes as a staggering blow to all the peoples of the British Empire. Since that memorable coronation day 26 years ago, he has become to each one of us more than a king, the father of a great family. Through 26 troubled years, through a terrible war, through times of unrest and depression, he has been a sincere and devoted leader, a wise and unselfish ruler, a king who maintained through all the storms of the 20th century the unswerving trust and love of his people. It was a proudly smiling king and queen who watched with 100,000 of their subjects the opening of the British Empire exhibition at Wembley. And later in the day, His Majesty's clear voice was heard by millions in one of the first of the broadcasts which have brought him so very close to us all.
And the latter, details of the funeral itself.
London is hushed, and all over the world countless millions are waiting to take part in spirit in the last journey of His Majesty King George V. This last journey is the climax to all the moving, impressive scenes of the last few days. At Sandringham, it was the servants taking leave of the squire, and the world takes leave of the man who was the symbol of all the might, majesty and power of the British Commonwealth of Nations.
A similar set of videos were made when his wife Queen Mary died in 1953, which also glorified George V's reign. But in Mary's case, the video was longer. George V's death video was 3 minutes and 42 seconds long, while Mary's was more than 5 minutes long. It is unsurprising as the films had become much more cheaper to make by then.
Queen Mary is dead. The Duchess of Kent was soon to be followed by the Duke of Windsor, who journeyed from America a few weeks ago to be with his mother during her illness. This is how we will remember her. A proud, charming queen, a lady of vigor to the last. And even when the years gently weakened her energy and she took to a wheelchair, she showed that same enthusiasm that had been among her most endearing qualities all her life. Queen Mary became a great-grandmother with the birth of Prince Charles, and one day in the years ahead, her great-grandson will be our king.
George V's reign was followed by the 11 months of reign of King and Emperor Edward VIII. However, he abdicated the throne in 1936, just 11 months later. He was then given the title of the Duke of Windsor, who ultimately outlived his brother and successor, King George VI. So George VI's death in 1952 had also 2 videos from Parthenos.
It was announced from Sandringham at 10:45 today, February the 6th, 1952, that the king, who retired to rest last night in his usual health, passed peacefully away in his sleep earlier this morning.
Outside the Royal Exchange, they wait silent, not knowing for what they wait. Here he was named king 15 years ago, as elsewhere in his capital. 15 years ago, following the abdication of his brother, George VI became king and was crowned at Westminster. With the pomp and ritual born of 1,000 years, the man who had sought the quieter part in life was crowned ruler of the greatest empire in history. For himself, with his devoted queen, he chose the joys of the countryside whenever his heavy duties would permit it. And it is as a family man that we shall best remember him.
Britain Mourns was the title of this video.
The passing of King George VI came as a sudden and most grievous shock to his people all over the world and to all friends of the British Empire and Commonwealth.
However, AP News Archive has also given us a similar video.
War came to shatter the world for a second time. The king was untiring in his efforts to lend encouragement throughout the long years of struggle. He stayed in his capital. His home indeed was a target for the enemy.
AP Archive stands for the Associate Press Archive. It is the film and video archive of the Associate Press, one of the world's oldest and largest news gathering organizations. AP has also covered the funeral, as has the Pathé News.
Journey's end is near as they pass the statue of Queen Victoria, his great-grandmother. The flag hangs low over the castle, where the king with his family found happiness and rest from the many cares of state which he made his own. Now the pipes take up the lament. The king passes, decked as at his crowning with the panoply of state. The man we knew lies buried in our hearts. And with him ends the rule of the House of Windsor. Behind him he leaves two brothers. One of them we knew for a while as the uncrowned Edward VIII.
In 1972, the Duke of Windsor, that is, former King Edward VIII, died. His body was brought from France, where he lived his last days, and the Duchess of Kent received the Royal Air Force jet carrying the Duke's body. When the funeral was held, and the entire episode was covered by AP. This is a bit interesting, as it was a colored film, which was getting ground back then.
The BBC is interrupting its normal programmes to bring you an important announcement. This is BBC News from London. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
That's right. On 8 September 2022, Queen Elizabeth II died in Balmoral. And this funeral was covered by BBC and countless other channels in news and social media platforms, as was the funeral. By then, the television industry had come a long way from the last funeral of a sitting monarch in 1952, and even more so from 1901. From Victoria to Elizabeth II, it was a long string of events that directly affected Britain and indirectly the rest of the world. And as for the Indian question, now that the last princess of India has passed on, we can finally say the British Monarchy Association with India is permanently closed.